Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you can see the screen that I just shared with you. My name is Patrik Zsolt Varga. I am a PhD student of the University of Pécs Regional Policy and Economics Doctoral School, and I would like to present you my research topic, which is the role of the state-owned hotel chains in socialist Hungary, the history of the Hungarhotels National Company between 1945 and 1990. It is a very important topic for me because my basic theme or PhD dissertation is about the hospitality changes of my hometown Pécs, and just seeing the central planning system between 45 and 90, it is a very important task to do. So I tried to focus on two main questions during my researches. The first of all, what were the milestones of the Hungarian hotel management industry between 1945 and 1989? And second of all, what processes led to the collapse of the state-owned mega corporation that hopefully you will be able to see by the end of the presentation, called Hungarhotels. As you can see, I used various sources throughout my research, from party committee documents, from the Hungarian National Archives, through the Hungarian tourism literature and studies on the country's economy, economic history, various galleries, national and local daily newspapers, and of course some statistical data of Hungary's tourism itself. Just very quickly, let me introduce you how the economy and the tourism and hospitality sector looked like between 1945 and 1990. Basically, this was the time of nationalization that happened between 1945 and 1951. The government established a Soviet-style economy and society that was based on socialist ideology. As per the economy, before 1968, it was a very strict planned economic system or control, and afterwards of 68, afterwards of 68, a milder central control appeared that let companies operate a bit more freely. From the 1970s, it wasn't only the heavy industrialization that was focusing on, but funds were also allocated to other areas as well. For example, healthcare, education, and transportation. The hospitality and tourism sector looked similar to the economy, because after the destruction during the Second World War, there was the nationalization wave that resulted a decline in the professional hospitality itself, and that was mainly because the working force integrated into the socialist industry. Reconstruction happened basically throughout the 1950s. Then there was a huge expansion in capacities in the 1960s, and we can talk about great qualitative development from the 1970s as well. Adaptation to the changing international tourism trends happened after 75, like the air travel, the communications, the mass population movements all around the globe, and of course, it reached Hungary as well. From the 1980s, tourism development became a national strategic goal as well, because the government would try to reduce the isolation between the West and the East, and because the hospitality sector was a foreign currency source of income that helped for the international trade of the country and the debt that Hungary had at that time. As we can mention, the very first step of the centrally planned tourism hospitality or the international hotel chain was the National Hotel Company, established in 1949. At the beginning, there were 13 hotels and other hospitality units that the company was operating. As you can see on the bottom half of the slide, in the capital, Budapest, there was the Astoria, Bristol, Hungaria, Britannia, Continental, and the Nemzeti, which were great hotels from the previous era, from usually the 1910s and 20s. But of course, other than the capital, there were a couple of hospitality establishments on the countryside and at Lake Balaton as well. The aim was basically creating the Hungarian hotel infrastructure for mass tourism, because in planned economy, there was the domestic mass tourism that was basically based on the youth and the worker classes vacationing system. The company was under the Ministry of Transportation, and the CEO was the National Hotel Company, was Miklós Rózsa, who stayed in the business for almost 40 years. As I already mentioned regarding on the centralization, it was crucial for the political regime in order to create the domestic tourism. On the slide, you can see 3 points. Basically, the centrally planned control regulated the accommodation availability for domestic business trips. Therefore, they could greatly increase the usage of the hotels. They prohibited the leasing of any kind of hospitality establishment that resulted a decreasement in the private sector, because private sector was against the state control. And of course, the political party basically reduced central prices as well in the hotels, because they wanted to show that hotels are not just for the upper classes, but for the middle classes as well, and for the working classes too. From the 1950s, basically it was a time of reorganization, and through multiple fusions for the total control of the hospitality industry, the central political government created the Hotel and Food Trade Center, but the National Hotel Company still stayed alive until 1957. After 1957, however, it has been renamed into the National Tourism Hotel and Restaurant Company, or in short, Hungarian abbreviation for it is OESAV. But until 1965, it still had a monopolistic position in hotel operation in Hungary. In 1957, the renamed corporation introduced the very first hotel classification system in Hungary, which consisted of 4 classes: one the above class, the class A, the class B, and the class C. Of course, the highest class was mainly for the foreign travelers, because even though that during the Cold War era, we cannot talk about international visits in Hungary, but for some business trips and for athletes, usually they accommodated them in the above class establishments. After the reconstruction, new accommodations are appeared throughout Hungary, and the very first was in 1959, that consists of the motels on the northern side of Lake Balaton. Basically, in 1958, there was the World Expo organized by Brussels, and it built a 2,500 capacity establishment called the Motel Expo. Hungary bought 16 units of this, let's call it motel, with 670 rooms in total and 1,340 beds as well. and they opened up 4 motels in Balatonföldvár, Keszthely, Siófok, and Tihany. In the 1960s, they started to build or establish the hotels in Siófok. The OECV was a very short organization as well, because in 1965 it has been renamed the Hungary Hotel and Restaurant Company, or in short, Hungarhotels. Simultaneously of Hungarhotels, the buffet or the restaurant and buffet company was renamed to Pannonia Hotel and Hospitality Company, that already took 5 hotels from Hungarhotels, which you can see in parentheses. But that basically ended the monopolistic position in hoteling businesses. However, the Pannonia, and later on in 1972, there was another state-owned corporation. They belonged to the government, yet the monopolistic position is no longer. After 1965, Hungarhotels was still operating the representative, the very high quality and high rated hotels, plus the northern side of the Hungarian Sea, Lake Balaton, whereas Pannonia operating the lower rated units on the southern side of Balaton. And in 1966, because of the rapid development and growth, Hungarhotels became a mega corporation. Not only in hotel operation, but also large-scale improvements started from the 1970s. On the next slide, you can see the list of the most significant hotels that has been built by the company. On the right-hand side, you see a couple of pictures. In 1967, the Hotel Budapest just built, that you can see on the right side, with 64 meters high. Basically, it was a representative hotel of the political party. As you can see, the company refurbished one of the greatest grand hotels of the Hungarian history, the Margit Hotel Grand Hotel, and it established a few other premises around Lake Balaton, Hotel Annabella, Marina, and Aurora. But in 1969, there was the very first international hotel chain that appeared in Hungary, because with the 340 room capacity, Hotel Duna Intercontinental opened, and that was actually the very first hotel on the row of hotels along the Danube in the capital. Here on the right bottom, you can see the enormous hotel that has been built, and right next to it, that was the remainder, or the remaining and still functioning building after the Second World War. Other than these very magnificent hotel establishments, the Hungarhotels built Hotel Silvanus in 1971, according to the very first hunting expo that has been organized in Hungary in 1971. And in 1976, the second hotel chain appeared in the country with the establishment of the Budapest Hilton at Buda Castle. We have to mention the period between 1978 and 1955, when Hungary got a $300 million Austrian loan that resulted in multiple hotels throughout Hungary that are still operating up until today. In this table, you can see that by getting closer to 1990s, the Hungarhotels was operating nearly 50 hotels throughout, not just in Hungary, but they have some foreign hotels as well, like in abroad in Munich and Vienna, But of course, it had hotels in Budapest, in the countryside, and around Lake Balaton as well. But this table really shows us that the Hungarhotels was one of the major state-owned hotel operator, or the very first Hungarian hotel chain that we can mention from the era. But of course, its significance declined from the 70s. As I already mentioned, the Nubius Hotels, another state-owned hotel operator, has been established, and that took away some major hotels from Hungarhotels itself. In the 1980s, several units were advertised for rent in the capital and the countryside that really reflected on some difficulties in the operation of the Hungaria Hotel and Restaurant Company. But even though it had some difficulties of the operation, the Hungarhotels still finished the projects, major projects that it started in the 1980s as well. And by the end of its existence, it had multiple hotels, restaurants, cafes, and other hospitality units. Between 1989 and 1991, privatization difficulties arose because the state-owned company was simply just way too large. If you can remember, I mentioned that in 1966 it became a mega corporation, and that resulted problems throughout the privatization. Because it cannot be sold in whole, they divided the company into smaller parts. Some of the hotels has been sold separately, but in 1994, the Hungaria Hotels Incorporation still had 15 hotels and other business shares that was still too large. In 1996, however, the Danubius Hotels received an 85% ownership of the whole company, and in 2004, the Hungarhotels and Danubius, formerly Hungarhotels and Danubius Hotels merged into Danubius Hotels, that is still an existing hotel chain in Hungary. Just to conclude of my presentation, during its existence, Hungarhotels laid the foundations for international tourism in Hungary by implementing the reservation systems, high-quality services, sufficient capacities, and meeting the Western expectations. From the late 1960s, the company built numerous new accommodation facilities, adding thousands of beds and significantly improving the quality of domestic tourism. Hungarhotels had grown into a giant organization by 1989. It was not only a hotel operator, but also represented Hungary internationally, ensured the continuity of the Hungarian hospitality industry, and participated in public catering as well, just to mention a few. Due to its enormous size, privatization of the company was impossible. After continuous leanings and sales, many hotels were sold independently, and finally, in 1994, the company itself was sold. Thank you so much for your attention. I really hope that it was a very interesting topic for you as well, just as it was for me. And if you have any questions, please let me know.